I'm Vanessa da Silva. I was born and raised in São Paulo, Brazil, and I moved to London in the early 2000s. I work across sculpture, installation, textiles, and performance. And I was invited by María Wills to take part in the exhibition Tropicalities at Vortic. So I grew up in São Paulo, and I moved to London in the early 2000s. I have been building my practice since I've been living in London. And I would say that the themes of my work is always looking back at my background and putting into relation through my own experience of an immigrant in Europe. So things around identity, immigration, displacement. I would say sometimes it's like trying to make sense of my own self through this dislocation to the UK. So I feel like my work is always looking back and forth between Brazil and the UK. I've also always worked with different mediums. So I work sometimes with sculpture and then textiles, and then I use performance. And I would say that each medium, I use them as language. Sometimes I feel that to talk about certain things or explore certain ideas would be better if I do through textiles. Sometimes I would think that the sculpture would translate these ideas better. So I see the mediums very much like languages within the work. So for the exhibition Tropicalities, I'm showing two series of works. One is called The Inner Rhythm of the Collectives, and the other is Mamão com Açucar, which means papaya with sugar. The Inner Rhythm of the Collective, a series of flags. I started looking at this symbol of the national flag. That was when the referendum was happening in the UK. So I was kind of rethinking of the idea of the flag and then seeing how the national flag has a dual meaning. At the same time that unites people, it also separates and creates borders. So I was interested to work with the graphics of different national flags, which I was redrawing and mixing them together, wanting to create a more of a positive idea of the national flag that was more inclusive, and instead of creating borders, more like opening borders. And with the Mamão com Açúcar textile works, I started collecting logos of product that comes from the tropics to the UK, like places like Caribbean, Colombia, Brazil, Jamaica. And I started redrawing these logos because all of these logos, they do carry the idea of the tropical, but there is this kind of a stereotype image of the tropical, which, you know, it relates very much to my own history and makes me think of home, but at the same time makes me think of histories of colonization, the extracts of the tropic. So I was kind of playing with this imagery to create my own version of this feeling of the tropical. But behind these textile works, they, you know, also talks about a lot of the histories of what it carries. Well, I think because I come from Brazil, the tropical has a very close meaning to me because I did live in the tropics. So it's not just an imagery, but also a feeling. Like, to me, it's music, it's food, it's tastes. But since not being Brazil, like living in London, I think I also look to the tropical and the idea of the tropical from far away. So when I'm using this imagery and working with, you know, the colors, these logos, I'm like also a bit separate from it, but also very close from it. So it's kind of a dream, or like me wanting to be back into this reality that I come from, but looking from afar. So I think there is like two different things happening at the same time. It's playing with my memory, but also playing around with this imagery to create something that is close to me, but also when people from here see in a different way. I think there is something about my work that, though I would be talking about something that is more political or historical, I also want to kind of give a bit of more of a sense of joy for who is seeing the work. I think if I reference, you know, the Tropicalia movement of the late 60s, that was also very vibrant and in a way happy. What was behind it was the artists at that time going against the dictatorship, but then finding ways to go through that, through their work. It feels like, I would say layers, because the image looks like one way, but it's also talking about other things that can be more political. So I think there is a contradiction there, but you can say different things with different images. And I think in this way, I'm like touching upon this idea of the tropical and then where I come from, but also behind this, there's lots of histories. When I was invited by María to take part in this show, I was excited because I was going to show the textile work. When I saw the exhibition virtually, I thought it was incredible how real it feels. It was quite impressive how it felt that I was actually walking through that space and being able to get closer or walk far away from it. I was quite impressed about the experience of it. The idea that it opens up the work to a bigger audience, also being more inclusive, like it's not necessarily people that like going to the art gallery that will see the show. It's people that are just browsing online. The exhibition will be on for longer than if it's in a physical space. So that also brings more people to see the works. And I like the idea of thinking of the future, that you can experience works of art in different ways. I think also with the VR, in terms of if there is a sculpture, if you can walk around the work. So I think in terms of the digital, there's so many possibilities that can be explored that I would not limit myself in terms of exhibiting virtually.